and welcome to the 74th annual Yizkor service of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, USA. It is my privilege to call upon the following individuals to come to the bima. Dr. Charles Springfield, our incoming President of Jewish Survivors of Latvia. Professor George Schwab, Executive Vice President. David Zilberman, President Emeritus. Distinguished guests, Deputy Ambassador, Mr. Oleg Ilgis. Cantor Malavani is already in his place. And Simon Gesunteman, our treasurer. And at this time, I would like to introduce to you our wonderful MC, Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Mitchell Lieber.
Thank you, Alita. By the way, reminder, please put your phones in shul mode, which is silent, off, vibrate. Thank you. My name is Mitchell Lieber, and on behalf of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, I welcome each of you to our memorial service. Thank you for being here to remember and look forward. In the chain of memory, each of us is a link. I was told about the emptying of the Riga Ghetto on November 3rd by survivors, including martyrs Westermans. Adjoining the Riga Ghetto, behind a wall, was a Jewish cemetery. That evening, Jews collected the remains of about 800 souls left on the ghetto streets, took them to the cemetery, and buried them in the frozen ground. They recited Kaddish. After the war, the founders of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, USA, began these annual gatherings, and actually the gatherings began even before the Jewish Survivors of Latvia was born. And these gatherings began to remember the murder. You and I, each of us, are links in the chain of memory that began 82 years ago in the cemetery adjoining the Riga Ghetto. We remember. We light 6 candles in memory of the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children brutally murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. Please rise. I'd like to call upon the following individuals to come forward to light candles. Alana Miranda and Jacqueline Rozak, granddaughters of David Silberman, with 2 great-grandsons, Isaac and Joshua. Michael and Noah Schwab, grandsons of George Schwab. And for the second candle, Michelle, granddaughter of Eva Brode. For the third candle, keeping it in the Brode family, Eva and Aviva, granddaughters of Eva Brode.
Don't leave, stay there.
So that was supposed to be the fourth candle. That was supposed to be. That was supposed to be. Oh, I'm sorry. Aaron and Jacob Kramer, in honor of their brother Leo Kramer, who is currently in the IDF, fighting for the future of our land of Israel. All three of these fine men are children of Alexander Levin, the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. For the sixth candle, Joshua Rachman, grandson of our beloved Luba Rachman, and Anna Rishik, granddaughter of our beloved Yoda Fagan. Each year, we light a seventh candle to express our solidarity with the state of Israel and commemorate our brothers and sisters who sacrificed and who continue to sacrifice their lives in defense of the state of Israel, and to all the victims of terror, including our fellow Jews. Less than 3 months ago, on October 7th, we experienced the largest massacre of Jewish civilians since the Shoah. So, in addition, we remember the estimated 1,200 brutally murdered on October 7th in Israel. So, unfortunately, in 2023, we must add them to those we remember in lighting the seventh candle. The seventh candle will be lit by Lawrence Krupiak, a member of Friends of Israel Defense Forces and grandson of Semyon Yizkor. Please be seated. For a moment, Yulita is going to organize a picture of all the candle lighters, and then to remember those who were lost, the 6 million, and those in Israel, we'll call on Cantor Malavani. So Cantor Joseph Malavani, who I'll speak about more afterwards.
Kindly rise. שכללו בסוחם יהודי לטביה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנקברו חיים על קידוש השם בידי הצוררים הנאצים ועוזריהם, יימח שמם וזכרם. כולם קדושים וטהורים, ובהם גיורים. ארזי הלבנון וידירי התורה, בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסדק כנפיו ליומין, ויצרו בצרור החיים אס נשמותיהם בגן עדן, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, ארץ אל תכסי דמם, ויהיה מקום לזעקתם. יבוא שלום וינוחו על משכבותיהם ויעלו
Thank you, Cantor
One cell
Malavani.
phone. I need the one cell phone.
Please be seated for a while now. I'm going to tell you about Cantor Malavani. I didn't want to have a big period between lighting the candles and the El Mirei Rachamim, which is the memorial prayer. Cantor Joseph Malavani is an Israeli-born American tenor soloist and world-famous cantor, serving as Chazan of New York's Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and a distinguished professor of liturgical music at Philip and Sarah Belt School of Jewish Music, Yeshiva University. And congratulations to Cantor Malavani on recently being honored for 50 years of service to the Fifth Avenue Synagogue community. Cantor Malavani possesses a brilliant spinto tenor voice described by the London Guardian as a most powerful, beautiful, and expressive spinto technique, sturdy and heroic, which you just heard. Cantor Malavani began his career as a cantor at Tel Aviv's Bilu Synagogue and in the Israeli army before stints at congregations in Johannesburg and London. Cantor Malavani has toured extensively teaching and giving concerts. Since helping found the institution in 1989, Cantor Malavani has been Dean of the Joint Distribution Committee's Moscow Academy of Jewish Music. Cantor Malavani's concerts have been attended by presidents and prime ministers, and the Lithuanian coin was issued in his honor. Cantor Malavani was appointed honorary chief cantor of Riga and Vilnius. In 1997, the Joseph Malavani Chair for Advanced Studies in Jewish Liturgical Music was established at New York's Yeshiva University at its Bell School of Jewish Music. In January 2004, he became a commander of the Legion of Honor, Poland's equivalent to knighthood, for his musical contributions. He is also rector of the Institute of Traditional Religious Jewish Liturgical Music in Leipzig, Germany. Cantor Malavani has kindly shared his world-renowned talents at the annual memorial service for many, many years, and we're fortunate to have him here again. And thank you again, Cantor, for moving us all as we remember the 6 million and those so recently murdered in Israel. Now it's my honor and great pleasure to introduce David Silverman. David Silverman has served as the esteemed president of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia for 10 years and just became president emeritus. He was born in Prague, Latvia in 1934. In 1941, one day before the Germans occupied his hometown, he and his family fled to Eastern Russia, staying until the war's end. Upon returning, he completed Prague Russian High School and entered the Tallinn Polytech Institute, graduating in 1957. 1 year later, he moved to Riga and began collecting and recording eyewitness accounts of Jewish experiences under Nazi occupation, and really paving the way for such collections and recordings. He was among Jewish dissidents who fought the Soviets' anti-Semitic policies and for Jews to be able to emigrate to Israel. He was finally able to leave for Israel in 1971. David Silverman is the author of numerous essential books and articles based on the testimonies of Holocaust survivors. These include books, pioneering books actually, written with or about survivors Rita Mickelson, survivor Ella Nadaye, and rescuer Zana Slipke. David Silverman initiated and funded the Memorial to Holocaust Victims in his native Prague. David has been an active member of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia since its formal establishment and has attended many of its worldwide reunions of Latvian Jewry. In 2019, David was awarded Latvia's highest honor, Order of the Three Stars, in recognition of his work on behalf of Latvian Jewry. David lives in New York and is a retired licensed engineering consultant. It's my privilege now to call upon our organization's beloved second president and its new president emeritus, David Silverman.
Holocaust survivors, members of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, USA, Council Joseph Malavani, honored guests. For the Holocaust survivors, the devastating event of Hamas' barbaric attack on October 7 this year on a peaceful Israel citizen with unsurpassed cruelty constitute true crime against humanity. It has been 85 years since Kristallnacht was the beginning of extermination of European Jews. These two events come too close to home, echoing the horrors we have endured in the Holocaust, when more than 6 million Jews were brutally massacred. As a Holocaust survivor, I stand here today before you and appeal to second and third Holocaust survivor generation and to all decent people to step up in continuing of the work of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, USA, started back in 1974. The future generation must never forget our history. We must be strong, united, and determined to live in long-lasting peace in Israel and elsewhere in the world. We clash nowadays with dangerous phenomenon, unprecedented growth of anti-Semitism in Europe and on our American continent. We are witnessing numerous terrorist acts against Jews and Jewish organizations, synagogues, clubs, student campuses, etc. Our family's Zionist fathers, founders of the Jewish state of Israel, considered that anti-Semitism would disappear as soon as the Jews would leave the diaspora and would settle separated. By a freakish way, Israel today appears as a generalized Jew, as a century-old anti-Semitism, and the Arab-Muslim terror is directed against Israel and against the Jews in the world. Our organization must take this into consideration in our day-to-day work, including our activities abroad. Unfortunately, as historically, and as of today, there is no unity and cooperation among various Jewish organizations, including in Latvia. Our organization cooperated with Jewish organizations, including Latvia, Israel, and elsewhere. Despite the fact that our organization is shrinking due to the nature of aging and passing away of the Holocaust survivors generation, our organization is normally functioning and is vibrant and attracted by our both new generation members, Charles Springfield and Elisa Fitting of Nehausen. And I wish great success to Charles as the president of our society and Elisa as the chairwoman of the board. So far as this year, we published two very informative Jewish self-burials describing our assistance to the Latvian government to be accepted as NATO member due to remuneration and memorialization by Latvia our Holocaust tragic past and support to the Latvian Jewish community, including compensation for the lost community property during double occupation by the Soviets and the Nazis. Also, it described the contribution of the Jews in Latvia for the struggle for independence in 1918 1920. Concerning our publication, the most impressive was that this year translation into Latvian Odyssey of a Child Survivor by George Schwab, with preface by Dr. Vaira Vike Freiberger, former president of Latvia. We have also promoted and distributed Mark Kaufman's historical book, Urban Letter, The Destruction of Jews in Latvia. The fundamental work by Bayer Miller, Jewish Latvia, Signed to Remember, Frieda Michels and I Survived Latvia, George Schwab, Odyssey of a Child Survivor, Rachel Raya Westermann Martin's My Life Journey, Liebkes Lied by Rina Janis, Liebke Museum and others. Among others, we actively participated in the United Nations 27 of January 2023 Holocaust Remembrance Day. And in conclusion, I would like to express my deep gratitude to all of you for participating in this memorial service in the memory of the Latvian Jews killed during the Holocaust, and I hope to welcome you in our future government. I wish you many years of good health, productive life, and happiness in your families. Have a pleasant Thanksgiving and a happy Hanukkah. Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
So, both Elita and I want to say something about David, and I want to thank David. I have been documenting the Holocaust in Latvia for about 20 years, first at a website, rumble.org, and now with documentary films. And I can tell you, David, I stand on his shoulders. I can tell you there's huge parts of our documentary that wouldn't be there without the work that David Silverman did to document the Holocaust in Latvia, from writing Frida Mickelson's book, I Survived Rumbly with her, and books on Almataye, and the first book on Zionist Lipke, and that's only the beginning. So, David, we love you, and stand at your shoulders. And Alita has... Oh, there's something for you, David?
This is for you, David.
Oh,
Yes. I want you to stand next to me. This beautiful bouquet of flowers shows the colors of the fall, most beautiful season. It's an autumn in New York, and it's an autumn in Prague, and it's autumn in Riga. But wholeheartedly, today, as I stand here on behalf of the Board of Directors and on behalf of all the members of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, I want to express our deepest gratitude for everything that you've done. You're an absolutely incredible person, and we want to thank you for your unwavering commitment and for your unwavering support to the memory of Holocaust and your tireless work that you've done, number of books, and without you this world is not the same. But today we gave you the title of President Emeritus, but you are not stepping back. We need you, and we're going to call you for every little thing, and there'll be no other events without you. And there's a beautiful proclamation that will be delivered to your home, signed by the mayor of New York City and the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, as well. So this is for you. Okay, I hope
thank you to Jewish Survivors of Latvia for recognizing David's lifetime of work. It's now my honor to introduce the Jewish Survivors of Latvia's new president. And that's Charles L. Springfield, MD, and it runs in the family. He is the son of JSL's first president, Stephen Springfield, and Rita Springfield. Charles grew up in New York and attended New York Medical College. He practiced emergency medicine for many years in Redding, California, and later moved to Florida, where he's also an emergency room physician. In addition, he's published articles in prestigious medical journals. Charles has been a longtime member of the JSL, participating in many of its activities and giving most generously to its program. Charles has been to Latvia at least 6 times to participate in international reunions, to further the organization's interest there, and to assist his father when he was president of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, USA. It is my great pleasure to introduce the Jewish Survivors of Latvia's new president, its 3rd president, Dr. Charles Springfield.
Good afternoon. Kenta Malavani, Mr. Deputy Ambassador, President Emeritus David Silberman, members of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, family, and friends. I too welcome you all to our annual Yizkor service, when we solemnly remember family and brethren who suffered through the genocide of the Holocaust in Latvia during one of the darkest hours in human history. The Holocaust in Latvia ended with 98% of the Jewish population murdered, considered to be the highest percentage of any country in Europe. We take this day out of our year and memorialize our victims, and we commit to never allow the world to forget what was done. We also recommit our support of the Jewish community in Latvia by upholding its community, health, and welfare programs while maintaining relations with governmental entities in Latvia and Western Europe as needed or necessary. It is frequently said, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. History today reinforces that notion, and that has never been as clearly demonstrated than with the heinous atrocities committed against Israeli Jews by the Islamic terrorist Hamas. Barbaric crimes against civilians, including men, women, infants, the elderly, and the sick. Crimes that included kidnapping civilians to serve as human hostages still held in a manner that ripped at our soul and made us cry out in pain. A new example of how evil can turn into anti-Semitic acts with complete disregard for the value of a Jewish life by entities who hate our very existence. Earlier this year, at the invitation of the Latvian delegation to the United Nations, a group of our members were invited to the Latvian embassy for a breakfast and then to attend the Holocaust Remembrance. It was led by President Silberman. For the Holocaust Memorial Day. It was a solemn ceremony that was powerful and moving. However, the final speaker to address the General Assembly that day was the Israeli ambassador, Gilad Erdan. And he pointed out and warned all of us that day that the UN's bias against Israel and the constant attack by various UN groups against the Jewish state, he predicted a great threat was yet to come. More on that in a moment. Several months ago, I was approached by members of our board to join the board. Shortly thereafter, David notified the organization of his need to pass the torch and deal with health issues. I was asked if I would consider taking the position of president of the organization. While considering my decision, I sat with my wife, Gail, and Freddie and Judy, and asked her thoughts and opinion. She shared with me that her only concern was the knowledge that I get extremely emotional when faced with the memories of the Holocaust and when anti-Semitism explodes in our world. I remember in my younger years, first acknowledging the pain, fear, and yes, anger I would feel when these events occurred or when I was faced with these feelings. I remember reading the book Children of the Holocaust by Helen Epstein, where she wrote, "I knew I carried slippery, combustible things, secret and more dangerous than any shadow or ghost. An iron box in my soul, difficult to describe." Then I thought back to the many times I had heard my father, Stephen Springfield, a founding member of JSL and its first president, talk of the goals and responsibilities of Jewish Survivors of Latvia as an organization, and his persistent fear that with the passing of time and without the continued effort and participation of the second and third generation, the solemn work would begin to fade and memories would grow distant. I accepted the position, and then came October 7th. As we made plans for the Yizkor service, October 7th occurred and the slaughter and barbaric acts committed against civilians and non-combatants reignited all those feelings I tried to keep buried deep in my soul in that iron box. But almost worse were the responses on university campuses, supported by many university administrators who were silent, if not supportive, of the anti-Israel sentiment. Major urban centers had demonstrations in the street, also blaming the victims. But I wondered whether this was how my ancestors felt on days like Kristallnacht. A sense of dread and, yes, fear crept in my soul. Then I watched United Nations Security Council and Secretary General Gutierrez, and I wondered whether he forgot the words he had muttered just 9 months ago. He put the slaughter of our people by terrorists in context. Where were his words to never forget from his speech during the Holocaust Remembrance Day we attended just last January? They were hollow words that slipped his mind while we wanted to put October 7th in context. I've also heard the term moral equivalence as some way to balance Arab lives and Jewish lives. And for October 7th, using the term moral seems like an oxymoron to me. The words and warnings from the Israeli ambassador flooded over me as the hatred for Israel bubbled back to the surface in the UN. His speech to the Security Council was disgusting, anti-Semitic, and an example of the general bias the UN has to the civilized and Western world. Ivar. My own history with our organization was, of course, through my father, Stephen Springfield. He was born Yizkor Springenfeld on January 30th, 1923. His family had a general merchandise shop, were active in the Jewish community. He attended the local gymnasium and was a drummer and singer in his brother's boy band, Peter and his Boys. My father always said he would have been Justin Timberlake if he was allowed to continue his career. At 18, his early life was brought to a stop, and the world as he knew it obliterated. Invasion by the Soviet Union, Nazi occupation, the Riga Ghetto, the massacres at the Park East Synagogue, the killing fields of Rumbala and Biberniki, then stints at Kaiser Wall and Stuttgart concentration camps, and then the final death march through eastern Pomerania, where ultimately being liberated by Soviet forces. After those 5 years, 56 out of 58 of our immediate family members had perished. Stephen and his brother Peter survived and ultimately immigrated to the United States. They started families and a business, pursuing a new life. I will share that for the first 20 years of my life, we rarely spoke about the unthinkable, except when war would break out in the Middle East and fear would boil over in our household. In time, as life settled in for my family in the U.S., the brothers began networking with like-minded Latvian Jewish survivors in the U.S. and Canada. Ultimately, in 1985, they established Jewish Survivors of Latvia as a 501c3 charitable organization with the goal of reaching out to the small surviving population and pursuing the need for remembrance and historical accuracy, education, and social support for the remaining survivors. The like-minded survivors included people like Max Kaufman, Gerd Fahy, Professor George Schwab, Peter Springfield, Leo Cram, Jack Ratz, Professor Gertrude Schneider, Luba Rockman, Joseph Ferber, and of course my dad, Steve. Please forgive me if I've left anybody out. Unfortunately, Latvia was still behind the Iron Curtain, and access to information was significantly inhibited by the politics of the day. In the late 1980s, Gorbachev granted limited autonomy to the 3 Baltic states, and Stephen and Peter decided to return to Riga to see distant family members and assess the situation for the small population of survivors and their descendants. The situation proved itself to be extremely tough, little support for our brethren, no accurate history of what had occurred, and the communist historical narrative was that we were victims of fascism. Infrastructure looked unimproved since the end of World War II. I'd like to take a moment to review the accomplishments of the organization and then make a plea to all of the members and their second and third generation to support and get involved with JSL. We should not forget our ancestors and martyrs and need to continue supporting crucial Jewish community programs in Latvia pertaining to the Jewish Community Center, the Bikor Cholim Hospital, and the elderly survivors. As well, the government of Latvia has moved and addressed many issues that we have raised, and we must maintain focus on the goals that we set. I was quite pleased to see that after October 7th, the President of Latvia and the head of the Latvian Seimas, its parliament, met with our community leaders at the Jewish Community Center in a show of support. I also came across a photo of a pro-Israel demonstration in the main square with Israeli flags prominently displayed. Now, JSL, by networking with the American government and Western European allies and its leaders, urged the government of Latvia to gain a place in the community of nations by joining NATO or the EU while addressing the historical record and complicity of many Latvians. That important approach, led by our own Secretary of State, Professor George Schwab, proved successful by developing a close and collegial relationship with the President of Latvia, Vera Freiberger, and her government post-independence. JSL helped and were supportive of the government of Latvia, making the case for Latvia to have a new place in the community of nations. As was said by former U.S. Ambassador James Howard Holmes when he recalled the work by JSL, he wrote, "George, as President of the National Committee of American Foreign Policy, and Stephen, as President of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, were the strongest supporters on every account. They provided for President Freiberger to speak to influential groups and leaders about Latvia's growing maturity about Holocaust issues. They, JSL, were central to the rebuilding of the Jewish community centers and the synagogues and restitution issues for Latvia, Riga, and places of remembrance. Likewise, they worked closely with the Historical Commission on Publication and the training of history teachers about the Holocaust and political compromises necessary for the Commission to deal fairly with the Holocaust on one hand and Soviet oppression and invasion on the other. For their work, both Stephen and George, and ultimately then David, received the 3-star medal for service to Latvia. He's also described the actions of JSL and the Jewish community toward the Latvian state as a great expression of forgiveness. However, the world has continued to show us that old evils lurk just below the surface. The winds of politics and evil can change and blow as a tailwind or alternatively straight in our face. I'm convinced that the need to continue increased support for our Latvian family by maintaining and shining a bright light on the history of Latvia is necessary. At last year's service, Ambassador Biltagovich spoke honestly about the threat to Latvia by Putin's Russia. These issues would need to be balanced by any other political issues in the country, and that Latvia must protect itself from a Russian attempt to again subjugate Latvia. Fear in Latvia is that if Putin wins in Ukraine, his next attempt would be to retake the Baltics. A reminder that the geopolitical world also affects the situation for Jews in the Western world and anywhere we live. In closing, I'd like to share an open letter I received after October 7th from the community of Holocaust survivors who volunteered at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. They wrote, "We are Holocaust survivors who volunteer at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, sharing our experiences with the public. We're always gratified to see how much interest there is from young people from every part of the world. To hear their comments and questions gives us hope for the future. We are Holocaust survivors," they wrote, "who volunteer at the U.S. Holocaust Museum. Today, as we see the murderous destruction of Israel, that hope is dimmed. All our lives, we mourn for our loved ones, lost to the genocidal actions of the Nazis and their collaborators. But we hoped the lessons of the past could shape a different future. Today, we mourn for Israel that holds such special meaning for us. In our youth, we were proud Jews in our communities throughout Europe. Eventually, that meant escape or certain death. We wanted to flee, but no one would take us. We longed for freedom and security, but there was no Jewish state. Today, the state of Israel, the guarantor of a Jewish future, is under assault by Hamas terrorists. Today, men, women, and children are again targeted Jews. October 7th, we witnessed the worst killing of Jews since the Holocaust. This is not what we expected in the final chapter of our lives as we contemplate our legacy. The future of Holocaust memory and education and the future of our people is very important. We write this letter to humanity with sorrow, but also with hope. We know a pain few can comprehend, having seen our families and communities obliterated. We are living proof that the unthinkable is always possible. Not only that, but we are living proof of resilience, that we can rebuild, and our fierce determination demonstrate this ability. We must be realistic about the dangers, but we should never despair. That would be a victory for those seeking to destroy us. That is why the memory and education become more important with each passing years. And we are proud of the contributions to fortifying new generations to face the challenges that lie ahead. We promised our loved ones we would never forget and never give up. Especially at this darkest of moments, that remains our promise and our challenge to humanity. With those words, which echo the message from your board of directors, I would ask you to consider the existential need for second, third, and all future generations to participate in our mission of education and memory. Our direct survivor victims are mostly in their 90s. Let's not forget our family and brethren. We need to encourage our family, friends about the importance of supporting JSL and to be vigilant as we continue to support the Jewish community in Latvia. We must continue our remembrance and education and growing the close relationship with the government of Latvia as we monitor progress and address concerns as they arise. I wish us all peace, health, and look forward to speaking to you all at the luncheon. Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you, Charlie, and not only for your speech, but for taking on the leadership of Jewish Survivors of Latvia and continuing the organization into the future and the memory into the future, as we all are a part of. Joseph Barber, Vice President of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, was a fixture at these events for many, many years as the MC, and I'm still just subbing for Joe. And unfortunately, he couldn't be with us and is in Florida today and sent this address, which I'm honored to read on his behalf. Dear President Springfield, fellow JSL Executive Board members, distinguished guests, and members of the JSL present today. Greetings from Florida. While I am unable to join you on this day of remembrance, please be assured that I am with you in spirit, and I send you all my fondest regards. At the outset, I would like to recognize President Emeritus David Silverman and thank him for his dedication and devotion, leadership, and unselfish service as President of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia for the past 10 years. It was an honor to have served with him on our executive committee. In his role as president, he improved the lives of many of our survivors and made it possible to honor the memories of those who did not survive. For all of these things, we thank you and wish you much good health and happiness in the future. Similarly, congratulations and thanks are due to Dr. Charles Springfield upon his taking over the presidency of our organization. Charles, of course, is the son of our beloved late president and one of our founding members, Stephen Springfield, of blessed memory. Charles grew up in New York City and attended New York Medical College. Subsequently, he practiced for many years in his chosen specialty of emergency room medicine. In addition, he has published articles in prestigious medical journals. He now resides in Delray Beach, Florida, with his lovely wife, Gail. Charles has been a longtime member of the JSL and a generous financial contributor. He has traveled to Latvia at least 6 times in order to participate in our international reunions and assisted and advised his father in matters furthering our organization's interests. I have known Charles for over 30 years, and I'm proud to call him my friend. His presidency represents the passing of our leadership to a new generation. I know that he will be a distinguished and respected leader, and we wish him and Gail much good health and every success. At this time of remembrance, it is fitting that we recall the founding principles and the reasons for which our organization was established over 40 years ago. And that is to honor the memories of those Jews who perished in Latvia during the Holocaust, as well as to assist those who survived. Incredibly and unfortunately, the awful realities of the Holocaust have come under attack. As we can see from recent events, there are dark forces in the world that both question that the Holocaust ever occurred and deny the legitimacy of the Jewish people's claim to and the right to live peacefully in our ancient homeland. In closing, I wish you all to offer a prayer for the continued security and well-being of the State of Israel and all of its residents. In addition, let us pray for the preservation and success of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, its members and their families, and in sign of thanks and best wishes, Joseph Barber, Vice President, Jewish Survivors of Latvia, Incorporated. So again, thank you, Joe, for all that you've done for the organization. It's now, again, a great honor to introduce another of the people who were here at the beginning of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, Professor George Schwab. Professor Schwab, as I said, is a Holocaust survivor and founding member, and his physician father introduced insulin to Latvia, was murdered in the Holocaust. As a boy, George Schwab spent the war years in the Levau ghetto, Kaiserwald, and Stuttgart. Educated in the United States, Europe, and Israel, he received his PhD from Columbia University. He taught at Columbia and at the City University of New York, where he was a respected professor of history and is now Professor Emeritus. Professor Schwab is President Emeritus of the National Committee on American Foreign Policy, and as its president, traveled the world to promote international peace and understanding. He helped bring Latvia into NATO and was a member of Latvia's Commission of Historians. He received Latvia's highest honor, the Order of the 3 Stars. Professor Schwab recently published his captivating memoirs, Odyssey of the Child Survivor, from Latvia through the camps to the United States. And I can tell you, I never expected a Holocaust book of a survivor to be an entertaining read, and it was an entertaining read. It is a captivating book. It is my honor to introduce Professor George Schwab, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you very
My task today was to introduce the permanent representative of Latvia to the United Nations. Early this morning, I received a phone call from Ambassador Pavluta Deslantis that she has come down with the flu. So my introductory remarks may be published or presented to her when I meet her. In her stead, we are very delighted to have with us her deputy, Ambassador Oleg Ligis, who is the Deputy Permanent Representative of Latvia to the UN. And we of course wish the Ambassador Pavluta Deslantis speedy recovery, as I did this morning on the phone. So my remarks I will convey to her. I don't have to do that over here. Thank you very, very much. That's all I have to say. I'm on the eve of my 92nd birthday.
Wow.
Thank you, Professor. I also received a phone call this morning from Senator Park East Synagogue telling that she feels sick and asking to replace her, but also she's conveying the warmest regards to all of you today on this special occasion. Good afternoon. My name is Oleg Ligis. I'm a Deputy Permanent Representative of Republic of Latvia to the United Nations. And it will be my honor to deliver an address on behalf of the mission. President Emeritus Professor Schwab, President Emeritus David Silverman, President Charles Springfield, Chairwoman Elita Fitinkov, distinguished representatives of community of Jewish survivors of Latvia in the United States. It's my great honor to attend this important event today and address you at a commemoration of Holocaust victims and survivors. Yesterday, we celebrated the 105th anniversary of the establishment of the Republic of Latvia. Our country was born on the ashes of the World War I, as it was proclaimed after the brave victory of our predecessors over great powers surrounding us. We always have cherished our freedom and independence as an indispensable way of our well-being. However, World War II brought enormous pain and suffering for all population of Latvia. 50 years of occupation, repressions, and deportations have left deep scar in our history. Holocaust remembrance has always been supported at the highest political level. The commemoration day of the victims of genocide against Jewish people was established. The President of Latvia, the Speaker of the Parliament, the Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, all top officials of country are always present at the official Holocaust commemoration ceremony on the 4th of July. In addition to official commemoration day, the Rumbula massacre commemoration on 30th of November, as well as a commemorative service at the Picnic Memorial on 27th of January, with the wide participation of the diplomatic corps, are a tradition. In recent years, the number of local events have increased as well. Apart of Riga, such events are held regularly in Liepāja, Ventspils, Daugavpils, Reizekne, Ludza, Jēkabpils, Jelgava, Bauska, Cēsis, and other cities and towns across Latvia that covers most of our country. Placing candles at the Monument of Freedom in Riga on the 30th of November, the anniversary of the tragic events in Rumbula in 1941, has become the most prominent newly instituted event. The tradition was launched as a public initiative by a group of grassroots activists in 2016, and the event draws hundreds of participants every year, including state dignitaries. The event has an invaluable symbolic significance and indicator of the awareness among the Latvian society of the Holocaust history as an integral part of Latvia's past. Ladies and gentlemen, intensive work is going on issues of the Holocaust research and education in Latvia. And fundamental studies have been undertaken on crimes against humanity perpetrated by the totalitarian regimes in the territory of Latvia. The Holocaust theme has become an integral part of the history curriculum in all Latvian schools. The Holocaust is among one of the most researched topics at academic institutions in Latvia in the field of history. The Commission of Historians, established under the President of Latvia back in 1998, devoted more than 20 years to the research and the documentation of the crimes against humanity committed to the territory of Latvia under the Soviet and Nazi occupations, including the Holocaust crimes. A total of 29 volumes have been published by the Commission. Several of them were devoted to Holocaust history. All volumes are available online. All of the articles have English summaries as well. One of the goals of great importance, also defined in the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance in 2020 Ministerial Declaration, is the opening of archives related to the World War II. At the Latvian State History Archive and in all other state archives in Latvia, all documents are freely available, including those which are related to the World War II and the Holocaust. Distinguished participants, the state of Latvia, after restoration of independence in 1991, affirmed its goodwill to redress the historical wrongful consequences by the Nazi regime and the nationalization of property enacted by the Soviet occupation regime. Therefore, Latvia has addressed with the highest political responsibility the issue of restitution of immovable property, confiscated or otherwise wrongfully seized during and after the World War II, to its rightful owners. The restitution process of private property had started in 1991, right after restoration of independence of Latvia, under the existing legislation, and was completed in 2006. In addition, during the denationalization process, ownership of more than 40 communal and religious properties have already been restored to the Latvian Jewish community. However, due to the fact that the most of the pre-war Jewish community in Latvia was exterminated during the Holocaust, a large number of religious and communal property could not be reclaimed in the places where no more Jewish communities exist. The government maintained regular and close dialogue with the Jewish community of Latvia regarding the last and the most complicated phase of the process, the restitution of hairless immovable property. As a result, the law on goodwill compensation for the Latvian Jewish community was adopted by Saima, Parliament of Latvia, and entered into the force on 7th of March 2022, thus being a concluding step of the restitution of immovable property to the Latvian Jewish community and concurrently fulfilling the Terezin Declaration commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, let me briefly turn to the global ongoing events. It is with a great concern that we follow the devastating situation in the Middle East. Latvia condemns the brutal attack by Hamas on Israel and underlines that further terrorist threats must be prevented. Latvia expresses its deepest sympathy to all civilian lives lost, prays for hostages and their families. Every loss of civilian life is deplorable. It is important to ensure the protection of all civilians at all times. People are suffering. There is an urgency of continued, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access and aid to reach those in need through all necessary measures. The situation calls for a rapid and significant increase of international support to the humanitarian organizations. On our immediate response, Latvia has allocated additional funding to Israeli Red Shield, to the UN agencies of UNRWA and World Food Programme to contribute meeting the needs of the most vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine continues. Russia continues to challenge the global rules-based order and to violate the international law. Ukraine is fighting for its survival and right to exist. Ukrainians are fighting for the freedom of us all. Latvia's support to Ukraine remains steadfast. It exceeds 1% of our GDP, both in military and humanitarian assistance. We must and we will keep our strong support until Ukraine prevails and those accountable for the crimes are brought to justice. Distinguished participants, the world is facing multiple crises. While continuing to be an active member of the United Nations, Latvia has presented its candidature for election to the United Nations Security Council for the period of 2026-2027. The bid is a confirmation of our transformation from a captive nation to a full-fledged member of the UN family. It is our sincere pledge to take up additional responsibility to international peace and security, to protection of international law, as well as effectiveness and modernization of the UN system. It is our turn and duty to protect UN Charter, to defend the rule of law, peace, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all UN member states. We know the value of freedom and independence, considering of our own history. In conclusion, let me stress that we truly believe it is the importance of facing challenges together. This is also proven by the President of Latvia, His Excellency Mr. Edgars Rinkēvičs, who is at this very moment visiting Israel to express our solidarity with the people of Israel, the fight against Hamas, and to discuss ways to prevent a wider escalation in the region. And on this, I thank you for this opportunity to address you today, and I share this moment with you, and to share this moment with you together. Toda Rava.
Thank you, Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN of the country of Latvia, Yizkor. You just mentioned Holocaust research, which actually continues in Latvia, and something that may be of interest to some of you is in the last 3 to 6 months, it came out that together with professors from the US and other countries, a murder site was located. And many of you have seen the terrible footage, the only footage of an Einsatzgruppen shooting at the light tower in Leopai or Levau. And there's actually, they have now located where the graves are and where these the Jews were shot. And this has very personal relevance to us here because that is where George Schwab's father was shot within days of that footage being taken. Our chairwoman of the board, Elida Pittengoff-Nehausen, was born in Riga and came to New York in 1972. She is a second-generation Holocaust survivor who has dedicated her life on stage to preserving Jewish history and traditions. She emphasizes the importance of passing the torch from generation to generation. If we forget the past, we have no future. Elida is a tireless supporter of Holocaust survivors, and throughout her career has raised over $7.5 million for the state of Israel, from Mogen David Adom ambulances to IDF, Hadassah Hospital, kindergartens in Sderot, Hort, and Hadassah organizations, just to name a few. Elida is an international recording artist with 9 albums who has graced the world singing in 16 languages. And I don't know how she does it because I have trouble enough with English. Elida is recognized among the 100 golden voices of history by Euronews. Through the pandemic, Elida gave numerous concerts on Zoom for Holocaust survivors in the US, Canada, Israel, and Latvia. Today, she proudly wears the title of the Queen of Yiddish Cabaret. Elida is dedicated and tireless as a member of the Board of Trustees, with an abundance of energy and commendable commitment to the future of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, Chairwoman of the Board of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, Elida Pittengoff-Nehausen.
I am humbled and privileged to stand here before you as we remember millions of innocent souls whose lives were taken away for just one reason, for being Jewish. We remember all those on whose shoulders we stand today. This link of passing the torch from generation to generation can never be broken. As we forget the past, we will have no future. And today, more than ever, we encourage everyone to instill this in their children and grandchildren. Every breath we take, every sunrise and sunset we admire, our children's laughter and their first steps, we owe to those before us. Our family, who by sheer luck and perseverance survived for us to be born. Our family lost more than 40 members in Holocaust in Latvia, including my grandparents, Moses and Luba Pittengoff, who were both deaf and mute. My parents, Benno and Fanny Pittengoff, miraculously survived to give me life. God gave me voice. Their spirit lives on in me. And my calling in life is to keep their legacy and all those brutally killed alive. Never again? Well, never again is now. This past summer, we traveled to Riga to participate in March of the Living. It was the same route Jews dragged from their homes were taking to Riga Ghetto, including my family. My ancestors took the same route. I was looking up to the skies, and in the middle of torrential rain, the sun rays appeared, as if the portals opened to receive their souls. I felt such a strong connection with my grandparents, Luba and Moses Pittengoff. We slowly walked towards Gogol's shul. Despite heavy rain, a solemn ceremony was held at the Park East Synagogue Memorial on Gogol Street, dedicated to the Remembrance Day of the victims by the Jewish genocide. This event took place on the 4th of July, 1941, when Nazis and their collaborators burned the great choral synagogue together with 300 people in the house of prayer. Memorial event was attended by the chairman of the same, minister, prime minister, minister of foreign affairs, other high-ranking officials, as well as representatives of Jewish community, high-profile guests, and the Holocaust survivor, historian Margus Westermanis. Yesterday, I called to my amazing friend, Marcus Westermanis, who is 98, the oldest survivor in Latvia. We met last summer. He invited me over to his apartment, and I was listening to his stories and to his songs that he sang so beautifully. He gave me songs that he sang in the camp just to survive with his friends, and he played it and he taught me, and I did promise that I will include that in my program. And he sends his regards to all of you, and he wants you all to know that Margaris is well, and he is ready to volunteer in IDF Army. He can shoot his Kalashnikov, but the only problem, he needs to shoot it from his wheelchair. So this is the spirit of Margaris, and he's such an inspiration and example. It is an honor for me to be a member of the executive board of the Jewish Survivors of Latvia, following in footsteps such an amazing women like Luba Rachman, like Gerda Fagan, who worked at the very beginning of this organization. I'm deeply inspired by our esteemed colleagues, Professor George Schwab, one of the founders of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, and David Silberman, together with our dedicated board of directors. I have to address the book by Professor George Schwab. It's still now, this is the book on my night table. This is the book that I go through, and I turn the pages, and my heart melts when I read about you, describing your palinka and maminka in your book, when you address your parents. Because I also called my mom and dad, but I called them papulinka and mamulinka. So thank you, and this book I'm so relieved because most of my friends who live in Latvia cannot read English, but now they have a chance to have this book translated into Latvian. And those who do not read Latvian and English, they have a chance to read it in Russian. And outside is the book, and I highly recommend. It is an amazing book. It's the book. It's a story of a boy who views the world around him crumbling, but through his eyes. And you survived because you had hope. And I think this is what we all have to remember today, that without hope, we will not survive. But we have hope, and we have dedication, and also we have unity. If we are united, we never fall. Divided, we fall. But if we are united, we will win. We cannot do it alone. Our organization needs to grow, and I need to bring new members on board of our organization. Without their participation, we are doomed. And this is the vital goal of Jewish Survivors of Latvia, and I constantly talk to all of my peers, my friends, my acquaintances, my fan club, and to anyone I can come in contact. Because if not now, then when? Our vision is to include second and third generation to our organization. And why don't we call them Maccabees? We can call them Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2. Do you like the idea? Good, I like that. And let's say Maccabees 1 will be people under 30, and Maccabees 2, there will be people over 30. And this was a suggestion, actually, George Schwartz recommended me. And we even set up tables for you downstairs with your names, because we would love you to meet each other, to exchange phone numbers or emails, that we can communicate with you better. And we asked Rafaela Nieghausen, a producer of Moving 2017 Oscar-nominated documentary, Joe's Violin. It's a story about a 91-year-old Holocaust survivor, to be your liaison or be your link. And Rafaela, would you just come and say just a couple of words, please?
Hi, everybody. everybody. Very nice to be here today. I am trying to take this to the next generation. That's me live streaming this to our Facebook page. Yes, we have a Facebook page. But it's an honor to be here. I grew up with my mother, my grandparents, with memories of the people I never met, but whose jewelry I wear and whose stories I know. And I agree that if it isn't really our generation and our children and their children, this all gets lost. So I look forward to trying to connect with the younger people at lunch and finding other ways that we can all stay connected as a community. So thank you so much.
And for those who have not seen Rafaela's film, it's called Joe's Violin. It's a story about a 91-year-old Holocaust survivor, and it was nominated in 2017. And I have a special guest. I have a lovely daughter, my first cousin, Riva, and her name is Sasha Levin, and I would love her to come and to say a few words. She's a remarkable person. She's an accomplished attorney. She grew up she was born in 1972 in Riga. She made Aliyah when she was 22, and she has amazing sons. She actually raised 9 children, and 4 of them served in the Israeli army. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for this amazing mama.
Shalom Aleichem, Yidin. How are you this afternoon? It's been a difficult time for us here to remember those who are gone and those who are still here. I was asked to say a few words about my son, one of my sons, two little ones are here. You know, when we were growing up, I was the first grandchild, and so this is before the internet. There goes one of them. It's funny because this is Jacob, we call him Yaakov Abraham, and he's 6'4". My grandmother, Leah Epstein, and my grandfather Avram were barely 5 feet. So it's beautiful to see how the generations keep growing. So because there was no internet, there was no real means of doing much research in those days, I was the sort of repository of all the memories of people who I hadn't met either, all my great-grandparents, cousins, uncles and aunts. And so when, as many of you, when you have your first child, the idea of what you're going to name your child is very meaningful. For Ashkenazi Jews, we often name our children after those who have passed. And so all of my children are named either after members of my family who were murdered in the Holocaust, or veterans of the Red Army who survived the Holocaust because of their service. And so my first child, my first biological child, we called Lev Yizkor. And if you know Russian and Yiddish, it means Lion of Israel, and in Hebrew it's the heart of Israel. And so I shouldn't have been surprised one day, 18 years later, when he decided to join the Israeli army as a lone soldier. And just a couple words, he was named Lev after my great-grandfather Lev Levin, who at the age of 44 joined the Red Army to fight the Nazis. And after Yisrael Schneider, my grandmother Leah's oldest brother, who was murdered on the beaches of Lepaya in 1941 at the age of 38, as well as his wife Fega, age 37, his son Chaim Salman, age 9, and his daughter Riva, age 4. And so many of the stories I grew up with were actually about life before the war, about how my grandmother, the youngest of 9 children, would sit around her large table with all of the siblings and their wives and their children, debating. You know, one was from Shomer Zair, the other was from Beitar. It was all very passionate Zionists in the room, but my grandmother used to end every meal with Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, the war ended that dream for many of them, but it was passed on to me. On my grandfather's side, he had a sister, Sarah, who was actually a chalutza, a pioneer who moved to Palestine and helped found kibbutzim. So you could say it's in my blood. Well, fast forward to when my son Leo was about 15. I made it a priority to give all my children a private Jewish education so that they would be able to feel comfortable in any synagogue around the world, and primarily to know who they are and where they come from. This particular son had decided to go away to boarding school, to a Jewish boarding school in Greensboro, North Carolina, of all places, called the American Hebrew Academy. And as part of the program, all the students, I think in their junior year, went to Israel to study for 3 months. When he came back, he told me the following. I'd like to take you and Papa out to dinner. Okay. I've already found a babysitter for the other kids. Okay. And I said, what is this? What's going on? Why do you have to meet us in public? Well, just wait. I'll explain. So of course, like most Jewish mothers, I'm already thinking, oh my God, what happened? Either he's become ultra-Orthodox, or it's about a girl, or the army. And basically that's what he said. After being in Israel for 3 months and seeing teenagers being required to join the army, men and women, he thought to himself, the IDF really protects all of us, not just the Jews in Israel, but Jews around the world. And it's not really fair for me to be sitting on the Upper East Side of Manhattan thinking about college when all these kids are sacrificing almost 3 years of their lives to protect all of us. I was not thrilled with this idea until I remembered that when I was 22 and I made Aliyah to Israel, I tried to join the army and I was rejected. I was told that I was too old and that they had enough men coming from Russia. They don't need another girl from New York. So it's hard for me to argue with that. He ended up joining the Israeli army, and interestingly enough, while his friends were all working with SAT tutors, he was working with an Israeli tutor to help him get a higher score in his induction for the army, so that he could join a combat unit, an elite combat unit, which was in fact Division 101 of the paratroopers. While he was in the paratroopers, he became a combat medic and served 2 years and 8 months. He then joined the Technion to study engineering in Haifa. And at the end of his first year, he came back to the US to spend this past September with us for the Jewish holidays. Now, we don't use our phones on Shabbat or on the holidays, but suddenly on Simchat Torah, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. And he looked at me, and I said, okay, do what you have to do. And of course, it was the events of October 7th. And the army was calling him back to join his reserves unit. Now, for a split second, I thought, okay, God, maybe there's a reason that he's here in New York. Maybe he doesn't have to go back. Is there any way I can get him out of this? As horrible as it was, there's no parent that wants to see their child go off to war. But he said, Mom, I'm a combat medic and my unit needs me. So he joins many other kids, 22-year-old kids, at the airport, and I gave him my blessing, a parent's blessing, that he should go with peace and return with peace. And so I just want to say, if you wouldn't mind, a prayer for the state of Israel, for the IDF, and for the over 200 hostages that are still in captivity, including a 9-month-old baby, and including a mother who just gave birth, if she's still alive. So if you wouldn't mind standing. I'll say it in Hebrew and then in English so you understand. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב ואמותינו שרה רבקה רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל העומדים על משמר ארצנו בערי אלוהינו. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה. ואדוני יברך וישמור וינצור את נעדרי צבא הגנה לישראל ואת השבויים בתוך שער אחינו בית ישראל הנתונים בצרה ובשבייה. ואדוני יברך וירפא את החולים ואת הנפצעים. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם להחלימם ולרפאותם ולהחזיקם ולהחיותם. וישלח להם רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף ונאמר אמן.
אמן.
Hashem, you blessed our ancestors Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Please bless the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces as they stand guard over our land and cities in Israel. Please, Hashem, stop our enemies. Please guard and rescue our soldiers from all trouble and danger. Please, Hashem, protect and return all our brothers and sisters held hostage and heal all the pain and suffering of our people who are wounded in body and wounded in spirit. We look to you, Hashem, for protection, well-being, and for a humanity of peace. Amen.
Amen.
And if Leo, if you're watching on Facebook today, Chazak ve'amatz, be strong and brave. Am Yisrael Chai. I just want to finish. Please join us in quest to give Jewish survivors of Latvia continuation, and let's together keep the legacy of our predecessors alive for the sake of future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita, and thank you for that incredible story of your child in the IDF and your children in the IDF. Now I'm going to read the names of our members and their family who have passed away since our last memorial service, after which Cantor Malaveni will lead us in reciting the Kaddish. Please rise. We remember Karina Stegansiva, Zanya Bernstein, Eva Goodman, Michael Margolin, Emma Bramnick, Noah Solovey, Rachel Goldschmidt. We mourn 371 fallen soldiers of the IDF who gave their lives to defend their beloved Israel and our beloved Israel. We mourn 1,200 brutally butchered Israelis on October 7th. Cantor Malaveni. Malavani.
I actually prepared a couple of prayers for what is going on in Israel, but I think that the lady did it so well, so I will cut it down to just one, which will just say something and there is a lovely melody. יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתתמלא ברחמים עלינו ועל כל עמך ישראל, ותצילנו ותושיינו מיד כל אויבינו ושונאינו, ומכף כל מבקשי רעתנו. הפר עצתם, וקלקל מחשבותם, ולא תעשנה ידיהם תושייה, וכמו שנאמר, עוצו עצה ותופר, דברו דבר ולא יקום, כי עמנו אל. ונאמר, אדוני הפיר עצת גויים, איני מחשבות עמים, ויהי רצון שחרבם תבוא בליבם, וקשתותם תשברנה. May it be your will, Lord our God and God of our ancestors, that you be compassionate and have mercy on us and on all you nation of Israel. Please rescue and save us from the hands of all our enemies and adversaries, and from those who seek to harm us. Thwart their plans and frustrate their schemes, so that they may not achieve success. May their evil intentions come to nothing, and may they not triumph. As it is said, they devise plans, but they do not succeed. They speak words, but they are in vain, for God is with us. And it is said, the Lord thwarts the plans of nations and brings to naught the schemes of people. May it be your will that their swords enter their own hearts, and may their bows be broken. And I recall a melody, a Hasidic melody. I'll have a chance later to sing some other songs. Utzu etza v'tufar. They can do what they want, but nothing will come. And the melody goes as follows, and then we will say Kaddish. Utzu etza v'tufar, davo davar velo yakum. Utzu etza v'tufar, davo davar velo yakum, ki Immanuel. Utzu etza v'tufar, davo davar velo yakum, ki Immanuel. All of you, whoever wants, please join me in saying Kaddish for our brethren in Latvia, and of course the Israeli soldiers, who, as of today, 65 soldiers were killed. Yizgadal v'yizkadash shemei rabbah, בעולמה דברך ירוסי וימליך מלכוסי וחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבו מבורך לעולם ועולמי עולמיה. יסבורך וישתבח ויספואר ויסרומם ויסנסי ויסדר ויסעלה ויסעלול שמי. I chose a couple of songs which are very much appropriate to what we are going through these days. And I thought it would be a little different to usual times. So the first one is Lo Teda Milchama, you shall know no more war. I remember singing this song. It started during the 6-day war, and it's still appropriate. Eretz Zavat Chalav U'Dvash, the land of milk and honey. That's what Israel is supposed to be, and please God, it will be. Are you familiar with the prayer for the state of Israel? And I will sing more, but each time I'll give you a sign and I would love you to sing it as a choir. Let's start. Whoever knows it, join me. One more. I have prepared more, but we'll have to do it another time.
But did you skip the Taylor Swift?
What?
Did you skip the Taylor Swift song?
I'll skip it. Yeah. This time, because of the state of Israel, I'm sure many of you must have heard about Hannah Senesh, She parachuted into Hungary and immediately caught and was killed. She wrote beautiful poetries, and it was composed. I was told by my late mother, who came from the town of Siget, which is the town where Elie Wiesel came from. By the way, there is a new book just came about him. It's worth buying it. And but that song is from her, and it's about nature. Halicha leKeisaria, going to Caesarea. I'm sure you know where Caesarea is. A little bit north of Netanya, north of Tel Aviv. And Eli shelo yigamer leolam, may it never finish. The sand, the sea. I would like to sing it. And please forgive me, I did not prepare this time the Yiddish song. That I need a word, but Hebrew today is very much important.
Everybody who is on the Bima can now go sit in the seats downstairs because we're going to have a screen erected, and our chairwoman, Elida Fiedengoff-Nehausen, will introduce this last part of the program.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to conclude this memorial with a video clip that comes to us from Israel. It's a video clip called Moses. And 5 years ago, I recorded this song and the video was shot in Israel, and we brought it to Israel on her 70th anniversary of independence. In 11 days in Israel, we gave 9 concerts, and we performed this song everywhere, for the soldiers, for the veterans, for 1,000 veterans in Rishon LeZion and all over Israel. So right now we have a little transformation, and I just want to take this moment to tell you that all the books that we talked about, they are available on the table next to reception. And we would really appreciate if you will take home and you'll purchase a couple of books, because this is for us kind of fundraising for our organization. And I also hope that you will move by all the speeches that you heard today, and that all the young generation, that we need you, and then we want to make sure that we see you more and you're more involved. I also want to give a shout out to our master of ceremony, please, Misha Lieber.